Hello and welcome to APM Research, the End Times, Revelations and Prophecy Part 3. In this video, Sandra will be showing you more from the Book of Miracles and focusing on comets. One Conscience, Jason and myself will be breaking down the cyclic events from recorded history and showing other informations that relate to the construct, its workings and mechanisms with references to various cultures. You will also see evidence that all civilizations were very well aware of the construct's mechanisms in ancient times and planned for these destructive events. You may even be surprised to find that giants, titans and even dragons actually existed, and it's possible they may return. For such is the nature of this realm, a realm that demonstrates that the cycles of compression and expansion actually have the capability to affect all life forms, as well as its electromagnetics playing a big part in DNA construction. All yours, Sandra.
In the year AD 595, in the time of Muhammad, something wondrous and fearsome appeared. At that time, a bright comet was seen over Constantinople for a whole year. In the year AD 1007, a wondrous comet appeared. It gave off fire and flames in all directions. As it fell to earth, it was seen in Germany and Italy. In the year AD 1103, on the Friday of the first week of Lent, an unusual star appeared in the evening. It appeared in the south and in the west. It was visible for 25 days and always at the same hour. From the south a great shaft of light moved towards it. After this, on Maundy Thursday, 2 moons were seen, one of them in the east. In the year AD 684, a comet appeared for 3 months. This was followed by such heavy rain, storms, wind and thunder as had never been heard before, and this element acted as if it wanted to destroy the city of Rome completely, and a great many livestock died in terrible ways, and people died from the lightning in the sky they saw. In the year AD 1293, a notably large comet appeared for 3 months, rising in the east and climbing to the middle of the sky, with its rays in the west, and when Pope Urban died, it disappeared again. In the year AD 1300, a fearful comet appeared in the sky, and this year, on St. Andrew's Day, the ground was shaken by an earthquake so that many buildings collapsed. At this time, the first Jubilee year was established by Pope Boniface VIII. In the year AD 1304, 3 moons and a comet appeared, seen around midnight for 3 months, in the German lands and in Italy, just as it is painted here. In the year 1438, in the time of King Albrecht, Duke of Austria, and son-in-law of Emperor Sigismund, a great darkening of the sun was seen in the daytime, and also a great comet with a tail was seen in the city of Liege. This was followed by great bloodshed. In the year AD 1347, a comet appeared in Italy for 2 months. After this, Emperor Louis IV, a Bavarian monarch, died. In the year AD 1351, in the month of December, a comet was seen in the sky around midnight. Afterwards, heavy wind sprang up, and a fiery shaft was seen to fall from the sky, which then presaged great disagreement between the Pope and the Emperor. In the year AD 1401, a large comet with a peacock tail appeared in the sky over Germany. This was followed by the most severe plague in Swabia. In the year 1456, in the month of June, a comet appeared, and within a year of that, a yet bigger one, which looked really terrible, and was seen in Germany, just as it is painted here. In the year AD 962, a great and wonderful comet appeared in the sky in Italy. This was followed by a great famine, so that many people perished and were found dead in alleys. In the year 1506, a comet appeared for several nights, and turned its tail towards Spain. In this year a lot of fruit grew, and was completely destroyed by caterpillars or rats. This was followed 8 and 9 years later in this country and in Italy by an earthquake so great and violent that in Constantinople a great many buildings were knocked down and people perished. In the year 1519, on the 14th day after the death of His Serene Highness the mighty Roman Emperor Maximilian of glorious remembrance, this comet was seen over the city of Mainz for 2 whole days, so positioned in relation to the Rhine that the star pointed upstream and the cross downstream. In the year 1519, after Christ our Saviour, around the time of his birth, the comet drawn here was seen in the middle of the night near Kraftsnitz, turned towards Strasbourg. In the year 1527, on the 11th of October, at 4 o'clock in the morning, this comet was seen in Westrich for 3/4 of an hour, and then it disappeared again. It was extremely long and yellowish red, like a diluted blood in colour. At the front the head was like a bent arm, as if it had a sword in its hand, and was poised to start striking with it. And at the point of the sword there were 3 big stars, and from the stars there issued a cloud-coloured stream, which was longer than the comet's tail, just as it is painted here. In the year 1527, several streaks like long spears were seen next to the comet, with several faces and small swords in amongst them, all intermingled in a pale red colour. Between them could be seen several large flames that blazed very brightly and with a fiery light, and the faces with hair and beards the colour of grey clouds were seen here and there to be flickering through each other, as if they were laying in water that was flowing in rivulets of blood, and as if everything was mixing up together, which looked so terrifying that many who saw it died. In the year 1531, on St. Bartholomew's Day, a comet was seen for some time in the sky every night in Strasbourg and in other places, just as it is painted here. In the year 1531, 4 comets appeared in the sky opposite one another, such that they could be seen in certain places in the Netherlands, just as they are painted. In the year 1531, a comet was seen in the Netherlands, which showered fiery flames like a blacksmith making sparks from iron. Quite fearsome to see, just as is painted here. Of the comet or comet's tail as it first appeared in certain of the High German districts around the 10th of August, and then for many nights, more than a lance in length, 1½ shoes wide, was seen in the sky 1531 years after the birth of Christ. In the year 1533, on the 27th of July, at 2 o'clock after midnight, a terrible comet appeared and was also seen for many days after this, which the astronomers interpreted when unrest later broke out in Germany. In the year 1542, on St. Rupert's Day, the 27th of September, a comet was seen in the sky not far from the moon for many days, just as it is painted here. In the year 1543, on the 4th day of the month of May, a terrible comet was seen in the sky over Pforzheim and in the village of Zesenhausen, with many fiery flames falling from it, and after this there followed many strange things.
Let's take a look at Nibiru and educate ourselves on what's really going on with this piece. As it goes for how this connects with the end times, is this Nibiru gets its cycle every 3,600 years. It is said that this celestial is greatly magnetic and will affect our world magnetics. It is to cause a pole shift, which then will cause great disasters in our realm. So, the last cycle put us back to 1581 BC, which is the time frame that the devastating Santorini erupted, along with other gigantic destroyers such as Krakatoa and Thera, which wiped out the Minoans. This also takes us to the time of the Exodus. This is where Moses comes into play, parting the Red Seas. Exodus 10:21 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Stretch out your hand towards heaven, so that a great darkness will spread over the land of Egypt, a palpable darkness. So, we see that Moses is active during the Nibiru cycle. During that time, the earth suffered great cataclysms. It is recorded that a celestial body appeared in the heavens, a new comet they called it, causing the eventual disappearance of the glacier layer. Next would be 7,200 years ago. This would take us back to 1752 CE, according to the Hebrew calendar. This was the time during the cataclysm known as Noah's flood, the deluge. There were sudden changes in temperature, violent storms, and water avalanches from ice breaking into the ocean, creating huge tsunamis that we can't even imagine in our reality today. So, now we can see that Noah was active during one of the Nibiru cycles. So let's dig a little deeper into some ancient histories of this cycle and the pieces that are affiliated with it, as well as the effects. Nibiru has several names: the Destroyer, Wormwood, Herculaneum, and Comet Typhon. Nibiru is a term in the Akkadian language translating to crossing or point of transition, especially of rivers. In Babylonian astronomy, the term refers to the equinox and the astronomical objects associated with it. Nibiru was considered the seat of the Summus Deus, who shepherds the stars like sheep, and in Babylon identifies with Marduk. So, Tablet 4 of the Enuma Elish has some great descriptions of Marduk. They prepared him for a lordly chamber. Before his fathers, as a prince, he took his place. O Marduk, thou art chiefest among the great gods. In thy power shall it be to exalt and to abase. None among the gods shall transgress thy boundaries. O Marduk, thou art our avenger. We give thee sovereignty over the whole world. But as for the god who began the rebellion, pour out his life. Then set they in their midst a garment, and unto Marduk their firstborn they spake, May thy fate, O Lord, be supreme among the gods, to destroy and to create. Speak thou the word, and thy command shall be fulfilled. They rejoiced, and they did homage unto him, saying, Marduk is king. They bestowed upon him the scepter, and the throne, and the ring. They give him an invincible weaponry, which will overwhelmeth the foe. Go, and cut off the life of Tiamat, and let the wind carry her blood into the secret places. After the gods his fathers had decreed, for the Lord of his fate, they caused him to set out on a path of prosperity and success. He made ready the bow. He chose his weapon. He slung a spear upon him and fastened it. He raised the club in his right hand, and he grasped it. The bow and the quiver he hung at his side. He set the lightning in front of him. With burning flame he filled his body. He made a net to enclose the inward parts of Tiamat. The four winds he stationed so that nothing of her might escape. The south wind and the north wind, the east wind and the west wind. He brought near to the net the gift of his father, Anu. He created the evil wind and the tempest and the hurricane, and the fourfold wind and the sevenfold wind and the whirlwind and the wind which had no equal. He sent forth the winds which he had created, the seven of them, to disturb the inward parts of Tiamat. They followed after him. When the Lord raised the thunderbolt, his mighty weapon, he mounted the chariot, the storm unequaled for terror. He harnessed and yoked unto it 4 horses. The establishment of the Nibiru point is described in Tablet 5 of the creation epic Enuma Elish. When Marduk fixed the location of Nibiru, Enlil, and in the sky, it states, Marduk made the stations for the great gods, the stars, their images, as the stars of the zodiac he fixed. He ordained the year, and into sections he divided it. For the 12 months he fixed 3 stars. After he had the days of the year and the images, he founded the station of Nibiru to determine their bounds, that none might go err or go astray. He set the station of Bel and along with him. He opened the great gates on both sides. He made strong the bolt on the left and on the right. In the midst thereof he fixed the zenith. The moon god he caused to shine forth. The night he entrusted to him. He appointed him a being of the night to determine the days. Every month without ceasing the crown he covered him, saying, At the beginning of the month, when thou shinest upon the land, thou commandest the horns to determine 6 days, and on the 7th day to divide the crown. On the 14th day thou shalt stand opposite the half. Nibiru, which is said to have occupied the passageways of heaven and earth, because everyone above and below asked Nibiru if they could not find the passage. Nibiru is that which the gods in heaven cause to be visible. Nibiru stands as a post at the turning point. The others say of Nibiru the post, the one who crosses the middle of the sea. This is Tiamat, without calm. May his name be Nibiru, for he takes up the center of it. The path of the stars of the sky should be kept unchanged. The star of has been described at various revelations as Vela, Fomalhaut, and Venus. These are different names for the same thing, which is where the confusion comes in for our present-day world. Many different names for many different gods, celestials, lands, and so on for different regions, languages, and religions lead to the confusion for us whom aren't educated in the histories properly. Nibiru has been associated with the area of Libra, also with the autumn equinox. The Mole Alpin says, when the stars of Enlil have been finished, the big star, although its light is dim, divides the sky in half and stands there. This is the star of Marduk, Nibiru. It keeps changing its position and crosses the sky. A little bit of Tablet 7 of the Enuma Elish gets into the many different names and titles of Marduk. This is more of the same, as I mentioned earlier, about the names changing and us not being educated on the fact that many names for one story is creating a confusion amongst our present times. Some of the names are Asari, the creator of grain and plants; Asaru Alim, who is revered in the house of the council; Asaru Alim Nuna, the light of the Father who begot him; Tutu, who created them anew; Ukina, the life of the host of gods; Ziazag, the bringer of purification; Sagzu, founder of the assembly of the gods, knows the heart of the gods. Nibiru has also been associated as the red Kachina, the purifier. Now let's look at some of the Bible verses that speak of wormwood and the effects on our world. Revelations 8:11 and 12 say, "The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters turned bitter like wormwood oil, and many people died from the bitter waters." Then the fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun and moon and stars were struck. A third of the stars were darkened, and a third of the day was without light, and a third of the night as well. We also have several verses that basically all say the same thing. We have Isaiah 13:10, Ezekiel 32:7, Joel 2:31, and Joel 3:15. "For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give light. The sun will be darkened when it rises, and the moon will not give light." Matthew 24:29 is much of the same, but it also adds that the stars will fall from the sky. Zechariah 13:8 and 9. "And in all the land declares the Lord, 2/3 will be cut off and perish, but a third will be left in it. This third I will bring through the fire. I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, 'They are my people,' and they will say, 'The Lord is our God.'" Revelation 6:12 says, "And when I saw the Lamb open the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black like sackcloth of goat hair, and the whole moon turned blood red." Revelations 8:7, Then the first angel sounded his trumpet, and hail and fire mixed with blood were hurled upon the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, along with a third of the trees and all the green grass. Revelation 9:15 says, "So the four angels who had been prepared for this hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind." Revelations 9:18, "A third of mankind was killed by the three plagues of fire, smoke, and brimstone that proceeded from their mouths." And Revelations 12:4, "His tail swept a third of the stars from the sky, tossing them to earth. And the dragon stood before the woman as she was about to give birth, ready to devour her child as soon as he was born." Some questions come to my mind as I read this stuff. Now, just so everyone understands, I'm not speculating. I'm simply asking questions. One of the questions is, could Noah and Moses be the same piece of technology with different names throughout the times? I do not have the answer. It's just a thought to put out there. Also, we know that Noah's flood lasted 40 days, and the effects of Nibiru coming online, they say, would be lasting of 40 years. So the next question that I think of, was the ancient text translated correctly as far as days and years go? Again, I do not have the answer, just voicing some thoughts so that maybe perhaps we can all learn together.
Ragnarok, the epic final battle in the Norse mythology that brings about the end of the world. Gods fighting giants to the death. The sun goes dark and the earth is consumed by the fire from whence it came. It's the total opposite of the creation myth. During creation, the earth was formed from fire and ice, and the gods defeated the giants for supremacy. Ragnarok is a reversal of this previous time, where events unfold in opposite fashion. The word Ragnarok itself comes from two parts, Ragna and Ruk. Ragna means to conjure or to bring forth. Ruk has several meanings, but the one I find most significant is origin. To me, Ragnarok means back to the beginning, a reversal of the mechanics of the realm, and a pole shift. It is said that when Ragnarok has been completed, a new world will be born. The cycle will begin anew. Many ancient cultures spoke of cyclical time. This fits the APM model and coincides with our research. It is not an end to things, but a gradual return to a beginning stage to start anew. The winding and unwinding of the cosmic clock springs is how Walter Russell put it. Walter clearly figured out the realm's workings and embraced it in his work, which fits in with the APM model. Timed mechanisms and events, it approaches that time. The unwinding cycle, which brings cold, as this is the expansion stage highlighted in our previous End Times 1 and 2 videos. Our ancestors knew very well how this works, and it's APM's goal to rediscover all this lost knowledge and put it back into its original context as best we can. Everything has cycles, from the beating of your heart to the cycle of your breath. From planting to harvest or night to day, these rhythmic cycles are everywhere. So it is no surprise to find cycles in the workings of the technology that governs the nature of this world. I don't believe it will be a reversal of what we call time, nor a reversal of events so that we walk backwards through the steps we have previously taken, but rather a reversal of processes that brought us to this point, being as gradual as the events that brought us to today. As for time itself, one can only wonder. The Hopi stories available to us describe this next phase as the forever time. What that ultimately means is beyond my ability to decipher. It falls into the realm of what I consider to be prophecy, and prophecy is always rather vague. We will have to wait and see. Prophecy, to us, is ancient knowledge passed down from many generations that gives us clues and knowledge in relation to how this realm truly works, and leads us to be aware of the destructive events that are in its cycles. We are supposed to remember all of this, which is why various calendars existed. They marked the time to know when the events were going to take place. Very predictable events you can find very accurately with devices such as the Antikythera mechanism. APM's research has helped reveal what our world truly is, and reinforces the fact that there is a creator. The glory is a technological glory which was given to humanity to understand, to learn, and to embrace. We see no other conclusion now other than it is being hidden and suppressed, privatized and monetized, which, of course, enslaves humanity. This is not the Creator's wishes.
We're going to take a closer look into the Antikythera mechanism in this clip, that hand-operated computer from ancient times that tracked not only the motions of our 7 major luminaries, but also cyclic events such as phases and eclipses. You will also notice this device actually has gearing for the epicycle motions which we see happen with our Sun's halo as it crosses east to west. This motion was also captured by Sandra with her P900 as she demonstrated in a video. It is also very evident in time-lapse photography. Ptolemy also factored these in with luminary movements, a clear sign that the luminaries are attached to a device that is doing the moving. The halo we see around our sun when it shows. Remember, scriptures and prophecies tell you we see things being revealed in the heavens in the end times. Revelations just means it will reveal itself, and it is. I want you to take notice of these two parts of the Antikythera mechanism that relate to various lunar cycles. If you look, you will see they have a definite cycle to follow that gets to a certain point and resets. It is definitely a countdown timer that we want people to look into further. Those people that understand these cyclic events and what exactly happens next. When I looked into the word Saros, it decoded as 360, a sign that it has reached the end and will restart again. What I want is for people to study this mechanism and find what happens when this event happens within this mechanism. Does it reset anything? Does another event or timer start? I'm pretty sure they're marking the start and ends of the compression and expansion cycles which are the cause of the destructive events in our history. Now they added the Olympic Games to this mechanism, or so we are told. I think it is another countdown timer to an event and it decreases in increments, which they say are tied to Olympic events. The passing of the torch may have another meaning that has been hidden. Perhaps the journey used in the paths of this event play a part in this cyclic event, because I don't think something so complex as this mechanism was designed for things like games. No, it is another rabbit hole to more information and understanding of these events, if anything. If you understand these cycles within this mechanism and can shed more light on this matter, do post in the comments below please. Now these two cycles here reminded me of Walter Russell's winding and unwinding of the cosmic clock. The expansion and compression cycles our realm undertakes every 400 years or thereabouts. Saros decoded as 360, this could be 360 years. The Mayan long count calendar had a 394-year countdown to which we think is the same event. The end times or revelations, a change in the mechanism mainstream will call a poleshift event. Take a good look at this mechanism people, it was so accurate it can still be used today to plot past, present and future luminary events. There is a lot more going on here than meets the eye. The APM perspective on comets now is that there are more projections, timed cycles that are there to remind us of a mechanism change, a warning that there may be destructive or other events. I remember watching Comet Hale-Bopp in the 1990s and noticing it change direction every night. At the time I assumed it was something to do with the Earth's rotation, but since now realising the globe is fake and it is the luminaries actually moving, this tells me that comets are actually changing direction and following preset paths. A good example of that was read by Sandra from the Book of Miracles, where a comet perfectly aligned with a river and caused its flow to reverse. Again, more evidence of electromagnetics below and above having interaction locally and not affecting every river in the lands. This is telling you that the comet's projector was actually below that river. If the luminary is directly overhead, then its projector is directly below. This would make sense with the flow of rivers. Remember, the word currents does not only relate to water.
This time, let's look at some of the flood events that our ancients recorded to have happened through history. In North America, the Hopi legend has two versions of the Hopi's emergence into the present fourth world. The prevalent one is that the spider grandmother caused a hollow reed to grow into the sky, and it emerged into the fourth world at Sipapu. The people then climbed up the reed into this world, emerging from the Sipapu. The location of the Sipapu is given as the Grand Canyon. The other version has it that Tawa destroyed the third world in a great flood. Before the destruction, Spider Grandmother sealed the righteous into hollow reeds, which were used as boats. On arrival to a small piece of dry land, the people saw nothing but water, even after planting a large bamboo shoot, climbing to the top and looking about. Spider Grandmother then told the people to make boats out of more reeds and use the islands as stepping stones along the way. The people then sailed east until they arrived on the mountainous coasts of the fourth world. In either story, it finishes with the Hopi traveling to the extremities of the land in all directions, building cities and abandoning them as they went, leaving markings on the rocks to show they had been there. Far in the north was land of snow and ice, which was called the back door of the fourth world. This was closed to the Hopi. However, they did record that others came through the back door into the land. Eventually, the Hopi finished their migration and ended up at their current location in northeastern Arizona. We also have flood tales of the Saanich. These are nations from the north coast of the Gulf and the San Juan Islands, southern Vancouver Island, and the southern edge of the lower mainland in British Columbia. They called themselves the saltwater people because they lived from the bounty of the ocean and the land. Their summer homes were among protected bays and inlets of the Gulf Islands. Their winter homes were in Sonic, meaning emerging land, or emerging people since the time of the Great Flood. The Eskimos say a great inundation, together with an earthquake, swept the land so rapidly that only a few people escaped in their canoes to the tops of the highest mountains. Other tales for North America include the Comets people with the legend of Quinish, Anishinaabe with the creation story, Turtle Island, the Inuit flood legend, and the Nisqually with the beginning of the Nisqually world legend. In Mesoamerica, one myth documented among the Teapanic and Hoxtecs has a man and his dog as the sole survivors of the deluge. But the man finds out that the dog takes the shape of a woman during the day when he is away. The man and dog woman are then left to repopulate the earth. Another myth, found among the Aztecs and the Teutonic people, relates how a human couple survive by hiding in a hollow vessel and start to cook a fish when the water subsides. When the smoke reaches the heavens, the gods become angry and punish them by turning them into dogs or monkeys, depending on the version. In Mayan mythology, as expressed in the Popol Vuh, the creator gods attempted to create creatures who would worship them 3 times before finally succeeding in creating a race of humans that would pay proper homage to their creators. The 3 previous creations were destroyed. The 3rd race of humans, carved from wood, were destroyed by a flood, mauled by wild animals, and smashed by their own tools and utensils. Mayan flood myths, recorded by Diego de Landa, and in the Shilam Balam of Chumael, holds that the only survivors of the flood were the 4 Bacabs, who took their place as upholders of the 4 corners of the sky. In Mesoamerica, a variety of reasons are given for the occurrence of the flood. Either the world was simply very old and needed to be renewed. The humans had neglected their duty to adore their gods, or they were punished for a transgression. Many of the modern myths include, obviously, Christian references, such as the murder of Abel by Cain as the reasons. In Mesoamerican myth, the flood was but one of several destructions of the creation, usually the first of 3 or 4 cataclysmic events, although there is some evidence that the Aztecs considered the flood to be the 4th. Also, in Mesoamerica, among the Nahue, which is the Aztec people, tell that there were no survivors of the flood and creation had to start from scratch, while other accounts relate that current humans are a descendant from a small number of survivors. In South America, we have the legend of Trenten Vilu and Keke Vilu. It is a Mapuche flood tale that tells the story of a fierce battle between 2 mythical snakes. Trenten Vilu. Trenten means related to the earth, and Vilu means snake. And the Keke Vilu. Keke means related to water, and Vilu, of course, snake. It gives an explanation of how the south of Chile came to have its geography. According to the Mapuche, these two snakes were originally the children of the most powerful Pillans, who were converted into their animal forms as punishment. Peripillion's son was turned into a huge snake, that would be KK, and Antu's son turned into a huge snake, and that would be Tenten. They were to be enemies, just as Antu and Peripillion were. KK was sent to live into the sea to help care for it with the water spirits, and Tenten was sent to live on Earth and help care for the Earth and to help humanity. Thus, these two snakes were used as an instrument through which the will of the ancient Mapuche spirit was fulfilled. It is said that after KK awoke from his years-long slumber, he became enraged because of the ungratefulness that men showed for every gift given to them by the sea, and thus used his fish-shaped tail to hit the water. With it began a great flood. Since he had the desire to punish humanity and to incorporate all terrestrial life to its dominions, KK ordered the waters to flood the valleys and hills, and to bring all of its inhabitants to the bottom of the sea. Seeing Tenten that both humans and animals were desperate, and that of men invoked her, and as by orders of her father she was the one who had to provide them with the wisdom and protection, she decided to help humanity. Thus, she helped the inhabitants and the animals to escape by raising them on her back and taking them to the hills. And she transformed into birds those who were trapped by the waters, so they could escape by flying. Those who were drowning into fish and marine mammals, one of them being the origin of the talking dolphin. And those who had already drowned in Sampal, which is mermen and mermaids. Those who were immobilized by the terror they felt were transformed into Mankiel, which means petrified. But as the sea continued to rise, Tenten had to order the hills to increase height to counteract the power of KK. Angry, KK began to fight against Tenten in a titanic battle that lasted a long time until both snakes were tired. KK was partially defeated as he wasn't able to flood all of the land. However, the waters did not return completely to their old level, giving Chile its current topography. According to Chiloe tradition, KK was satisfied with the portion of land that he had managed to flood, and delegated his functions pertaining to the sea to the great Milalobo. According to Mapuche tradition, after the cataclysm, everyone continued their quiet life until one day it was Tenten who was angered by the attitude that men had, and made all the volcanoes erupt, and their population had to move to safer places. From that moment on, Tenten continues to manifest itself through earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, while KK continues to cause tidal waves and floods when he rolls over during his sleep. Other South American tales also include from Canary, the Inca, Muisca, and the Tupi. In Asia, in the ancient Near East, in Mesopotamia, there is the Gilgamesh flood myth, which says the great gods Anu, Enlil, Ninurta, Inuji, and Ah were sworn to secrecy about their plan to cause a flood. But Ah told the plan to Etnapishtim. He was ordered to build a boat which was to have equal dimensions with the corresponding width and length, which was 120 cubits, with 6 decks divided into 7 and 9 compartments, and be covered over like the Apsu boats. He was told to tell the elders they can no longer inhabit Enlil territory, and they should go down to Apsu to live in the Ah territory, which is freshwater marshland near the temple of Ah, or known as Aninki, at the city of Eridu. When the storm came in the early morning, a black cloud arose from the horizon. The thunder god, Adad, rumbled the cloud, and the storm gods, Shular and Hanish, went over the mountains and land. The Anunnaki gods lit up the land with their lightning. There was a stunned shock at Adad's deeds, which turned everything to blackness, and the land was shattered like a pot. All day the south wind blew, and the water overwhelmed the people like an attack. No one could see another. The mistress of the gods wailed that the old days had turned to clay because she had said evil things in the assembly of the gods, ordering a catastrophe to destroy her people and fill the sea like fish. The other gods wept with her. Their lips were burning. The flood lasted 6 days and 6 nights, flattening the land. On the 7th day, the storm was pounding like a woman in labor. Then the sea calmed, and the whirlwind and flood stopped. All day there was quiet. All humans had turned to clay. The terrain was flat. The boat then lodged on Mount Nemush. Other stories from the ancient Near East are the Sumerian creation legend, and in Abrahamic religions we have Noah's Ark, which we already covered previously, as well as the Islamic view of Noah. In China, there is a great flood of China story, which was a major flood event in ancient China that continued for 2 generations, which resulted in great population displacement, among other disasters such as storms and famine. People left their homes to live on high hills and mountains. Dating has taken this event back to around 1900 BC, which is about 400 years after the Exodus event we discussed prior. The legend says it was during the reign of Emperor Yao that the Great Flood began. The flood was so vast that no part of Yao's territory was spared, and both the Yellow River and the Yangtze valleys were flooded. The nature of the flood is shown in the following quote. Like endless boiling water, the flood is pouring forth destruction, boundless and overwhelming. It overtops the hills and mountains, rising and ever rising. It threatens the very heavens. How the people must be groaning and suffering. In India, we have an incarnation of Lord Vishnu as a fish. He forewarns Manu, a human, about an impending catastrophic flood and orders him to collect all the grains of the world in a boat. In some forms of the story, all living creatures are also to be preserved in the boat. When the flood destroys the world, Manu, in some versions, are accompanied by the 7 great sages. They survive by boarding the ark, which Lord Vishnu then pulls to safety. In Paluga, the creator god of the inhabitants of Andaman Islands sends a devastating flood to punish people who have forgotten its commands. Only 4 people survive, 2 men and 2 women. From the Philippines, we have Igorot. It says, when the world was flat and there were no mountains, there lived 2 brothers, sons of Lumawig, the Great Spirit. The brothers were fond of hunting. Since there were no mountains, there was no place to catch pig and deer, so the older brother said, "Let us cause the water to flow over all the world and cover it, then the mountains will have to rise up." The others from Asia include Korea, Malaysia, and the Decoded people. Now, over in Europe, the ancient Greek flood myths describe 3 floods. The flood of Ótroðinn says 9,000 years ago, a never seen again accumulation of soil came down from the mountains, and earth fell away all around and sunk out of sight. Only small islands and the mere skeleton of the land was left behind. The flood of Ótroðinn says the Titan Prometheus advised his son to build a chest. All men perished except those that escaped to high mountains. The mountains in Thessaly were parted, and all the world beyond Isthmus and Peloponnese was overwhelmed. Deucalion and his wife floated in a chest for 9 days and 9 nights. Afterwards, at the bidding of Zeus, they threw stones which became men and women. The Bibliotheca gives this as an etymology of the Greek Laos people as derived from the lost stone. And the flood of Dardanus says, Dardanus left Phineus in Arcadia to colonize a land in the northeast Aegean Sea. When the deluge occurred, the land was flooded, and the mountain where he and his family survived formed the island of Samothrace. He left Samothrace on an inflated skin to the opposite shores of Asia Minor and settled on Mount Ida. They lived in the open for 50 years. His grandson, Tros, moved from the highlands down to a large plain on the hill that had many rivers flowing down from Ida above. There he built a city which was named Troy. Today we call the area Dardanelles. The Augean deluge ended the Silver Age, and the flood of Deucalion ended the First Bronze Age. In addition to these floods, the Greeks tell how the world was also periodically destroyed by fire. Others from Europe include the Welsh, the Norse, and the Finnish flood legends. The Irish has Labor Gabala Erin, which says the first people to arrive in Ireland are led by Cessair, daughter of Bith, son of Noah. They are told to go to the western edge of the world to escape the oncoming flood. When the flood comes, Fintan is the only one to survive. He becomes a salmon and later an eagle and a hawk, living for 5,500 years after the flood, whence he becomes a man again and recounts the Ireland's history. Now we can move to the Oceania region. This would include Polynesia and Hawaii. In Hawaiian mythology, Nu'u was a man who built an ark with which he escaped a great flood. He landed his vessel on top of Mauna Kea on the Big Island. Nu'u mistakenly attributed his safety to the moon and made sacrifices to it. Cain, the creator god, descended to earth on a rainbow and explained Nu'u's mistake. In the Maori tradition, Ruadapu became angry when his father elevated his younger half-brother ahead of him. Ruadapu lured his half-brother and a large number of young men of high birth into his canoe and took them out to sea, where he drowned them. He called on the gods to destroy his enemies and threatened to return as the great wave of early summer. As he struggled for his life, the half-brother recited an incantation invoking the southern humpback whales to carry him ashore. The last place that we'll talk about is Africa. I found no tales of any floods for Africa. However, our own research shows us that in northwestern Africa, near the Eye of the Sahara, there's clear runoff of where there used to be waters that ran back off into the ocean. Most of Africa I would consider safe zones for the most part, due to the high elevation. Now, let's turn our attention for a moment towards Japan. There are dots along the coastal hills of Japan, and these things are called the tsunami stones. These stones are placed around 300 feet higher than the highest recorded wave. That wave was 127 feet high. These stones are centuries old and give warning to descendants to avoid the same suffering as the ancestors. The warnings from the past read, "Do not build any homes below this point. High dwellings are the peace and harmony of our descendants. Remember the calmity of the great tsunami." Other warnings say, "If an earthquake occurs, go to highland in case they foreshadow destructive waves." So, as we can see, this recorded history of catastrophes and floods are not just secluded to the Noah story. Organized religion wants us to believe there was one flood that destroyed the world. However, these different events are recorded through different eras in history in all cultures of the world. We now call this the Noah cycle. Even today, there's an application mainstream is using called the NOAA Weather Radar, which provides us with weather, hydrologic, and climate forecasting for the United States and its territories, as well as adjacent waters and ocean areas. This cycle has occurred over and over in history, right around the 365 to 394 year mark. These events are the cause of mudfloods, the disappearance of cultures through time, as well as changes to our DNA. As I have said before, this is not meant to cause fear, but to educate us on the cycles of Earth to enable survival, which our ancestors have told us repeatedly through the ages. High land is the way to survival. Let's talk a little bit about this map. This map was put out there by Ed Dames. He's an ex-CIA agent, and this is the map of what's going to occur with our world after a pole shift. So the first area we're going to look at is the red zones. These are our safe zones, which, as we can see, we have some in the United States, South America, Greenland, and part of Europe, and a little bit in Australia and New Zealand. Next, we'll look at the dark blue. This is where the coastal subsidence will occur. This will be in northeast Russia and the southern tip of South America. Next, let's look at the green. This is where landmass is submerged. This appears to be part of Ireland, Western Australia, southern part of America, along with the eastern side of Mexico, and the eastern coast of America and Canada. Next, let's look at where our hot and cold areas will mix. This will run through the United States, southern South America, and we'll have an area that runs up from Africa up through the middle of Europe, and we'll also have a little bit over in Australia. Next, we'll look at our flood-prone areas. That looks to be a lot of northeastern Europe, most of the UK, northeastern Africa, and northwestern Canada, as well as the broken up islands above Canada. Next, we have our loss of agriculture, which includes wheat, barley, rye, corn, sago, millet, rice, potatoes, apples, citrus, and grapes. These areas are going to include part of Europe, east and west, India, part of Australia, Canada, and a great deal of the United States, as well as South America. Next, we have more loss. This will consist of our livestock, horticulture, and agriculture. These items will include beef, dairy, pigs, sheep, coconut, cotton, hemp oils, peanuts, and sugars. Next, we will have new faults developing. What I noticed about these is they're running more of a north to south than an east to west. Next, let's look at the epicenters of new major volcanic and seismic activity. So we have up in northern North America. We also have Southern America, Mexico, Eastern South America, Southeastern South America. We're also going to have new activity in Iceland. We have activity in Europe and Asia, all across. We also have a major new epicenter for great activity, which sits right about where the area that I think there's one very large volcano that runs about 1,600 miles across and 1,600 miles north and south. So, an effect of all of this is going to be that new land is going to rise. We're going to have land that rises just west of America, quite a bit west of South America, somewhere near Easter Island or Polynesia. We're also going to have land that emerges southeast of Greenland, as well as the northwest of Europe. So, I hope that this information gives us somewhat of an idea of where is safe and where is not, and what we need to do to survive.
This animation will be explained more in our next video, but because it involves spiders, which one conscience has already mentioned, this is what they decode as to us. Some of you may recognise these. If not, don't worry, our next video goes deeper with them. Now, Hoppy Prophecy and others have spiders and cobwebs in their cultures, and say we will see spiderwebs in the sky. These are what they are referring to alongside various halos. There is a very good chance you, your children, even your grandchildren may see these in the heavens, and this would be their alignment. This is not all of them, of course, just some to show you what you may witness in the heavens. Now, it doesn't take a genius to see gaps where others exist and connect to other areas. What you are looking at are more parts of the construct, more events that are timed cycles. I will give these a more thorough breakdown in our next video, but while we are on the subject of Perseus and Medusa, consider that Perseus represents one of these and reroutes power from another technology that has detrimental effects on all living species. So detrimental in fact that it can instantly petrify, hence the name Medusa. There is a technology that more than likely petrified the giants, titans and other species in our realm, and Perseus represents that rerouting of the power. The cutting off of the head is actually making sure it does not get powered up, is how it decodes. Isn't that amazing, people? The story in the stars just happens to be perfectly demonstrated in the workings of the realm. The stars truly are a map of the events and mechanisms that take place in the underworld. Perseus repeats this story every 400 years, it seems. You can now see why there are many depictions, statues and the like of Perseus and Medusa. They have very real meaning when it comes down to knowing what these cyclic events are truly doing. Our ancestors everywhere knew this, of course. Doesn't this really bring to life all those stories and what they called mythologies into context? Our ancestors were telling the truth. All this, of course, has been hidden, suppressed, privatized and monetized to hide how our realm truly works. Our research just keeps showing us we live in a technological construct that has very, very intelligent design. Take a very good look, people. This is an APM prediction. You will see these in the heavens at some point in the future. I borrowed this video from Jimbo's channel. Feel free to shout out if you recognize anything in this video. Now we can talk about compression and expansion a bit more. If you remember, I mentioned in a previous video the giants may have been born near the end of the expansion cycle. We do have to consider this. It seems we are at the end of a compression cycle, and the poleshift event will take us into the expansion cycle, a mechanism switch related to the winding and unwinding of the cosmic clock spring, which you can find in Walter Russell's work. When this event happens, we would expect to see a comet and of course widespread chaos and destruction, which is what is explained in scriptures and prophecies, the wrath of God. These are merely warnings for us to understand. Beware the cyclic changes from this amazing construct's mechanisms when they start up and make the needed changes to perform their mechanism's roles. It is part of how it works. We basically live on top of a very powerful and complex machine. Our ancestors were very well aware of this. You will have noticed the genetic changes in our previous End Times Decoded videos. New life forms can be created, and ones long gone may return. These beings may have been created during the poleshift event, which is basically a polarity switch. It may be so powerful it puts out a pulse like an EMP, which of course affects any beings in its path. Perhaps this is Medusa, turning living beings into petrified or crystallized rock instantly. These beings were petrified instantly and seemed completely unaware of anything taking place. Frozen in time, and they litter the landscapes everywhere. We are literally walking on giants and titans. Roger from Mud Fossil University also covers these, and you will find he already has DNA proof and is also very easily pointing out various parts of anatomy on some of the largest beings that lay on and within the ground. He will even show you a dragon in northwest Africa that is a few thousand miles in length. One Conscience and Jimbo have also found dragons on the landscape. There is even a reference to the green skin of dragons in John Dee's work, which relate to the West Gates. Dragons are also mentioned in the overlay I used with the world chakras in my first video on decoding this realm. I'll leave links below to these channels should you wish to look further. So those various faces mentioned in scriptures, the sets of 4 faces, they will be playing a part in the genetic makeup of various species. I'll not be surprised if there is more information sealed below in the rooms the angel technology reside in, the technology that is responsible for the arts and acts of creation. A good look at Walter Russell's work will show you we are talking about electrocrystallization. If you look further into that process, you will find that some scientists actually made insects appear while experimenting. This was repeated and the same thing happened. Insects appeared. This would make sense when you think of plagues of locusts appearing from nowhere. It may very well have been a certain technology that switched on to do its role, and the insects were like a side effect. However you look at it, we must consider that technology of this type will be playing a big part in creation. This realm is a creating realm. Even Walter Russell stated this. So evolution now has another perspective to consider. Mainstream's version doesn't work and is an excuse to hide the fact technology is involved. Technology created by a creator of very large size, looking at our grid overlays. The technology appears to create a duality, male and female, positive and negative. It is always trying to balance nature. Now we decode what the nature of what the realm really is. It's not hard to see that the nature of this technology is to create opposites and try to keep an equilibrium. This is very, very intelligent design and explains what we see in scriptures very well. It has just been hidden for obvious reasons, for if humans ever had control over this technology, I'm sure you can see how dangerous it would be in the wrong hands. Technology that can petrify, cause quakes, tsunamis, destruction and such, not to mention growing your own gold, silver, copper, etc., which is also mentioned by Walter Russell. Any cooperation knowing this knowledge would be the most powerful cooperation on earth, was how Walter worded it. And here we are today, finding out the earth is flat, realizing that treaties have been put into place to stop you exploring, and everything that have been taught has been a lie. History, space, the sciences, to mention a few. But when they lie about the shape of the world, you realize there is something very important being hidden. The mechanics of our world, the nature of our world, the construct and its creator, and all that implies. The APM model we are creating based upon our new understandings, research and decodings encompasses this information easily into our restructured view of the true world model. It makes perfect sense to us. This is the knowledge we were being taught in ancient times, and various pole shift events and other changes have slowly but surely eroded that information into the idiocy we are being taught today in our schools. An education which is more like brainwashing, indoctrination, assumptions, assertions and excuses, including an impossible world model that cannot be proven scientifically and is easily debunked. Open your eyes, people, there is a bigger picture to see here.
The Greeks and Romans believed that the appearance of comets, meteors and meteor showers were portentous. They were signs that something good or bad had happened, or were about to happen. The arrival of a comet could herald the birth of a great figure, and some people have even argued that the star in the sky, which the Persian Magi followed to Bethlehem to see the newborn Jesus, was actually a comet. In the spring of 44 BC, a comet that appeared was interpreted as a sign of the death of Julius Caesar following his murder. Caesar's adopted son Octavian, soon to be the Emperor Augustus, made much of the comet which burned in the sky during the funeral games held for Caesar. This portentous event was frequently celebrated in the ancient sources. In his epic poem, the Aeneid, Virgil describes how a star appeared in the daytime, and Augustus persuaded people to believe it was Caesar. Augustus celebrated the comet and the death of his father on coins. It did help to be the son of a god when trying to rule the Roman Empire, and many examples survive today. The Roman historian Cassius Dio referred to comet stars occurring in August 30 BC. These are mentioned as among the portents witnessed after the death of the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. Experts are not entirely sure what it means when Dio uses the plural term comet stars, but some have connected this recorded event to the annual Perseid meteor shower. Though it retains an ancient Greek name, we now know that the arrival of the Perseid meteor shower every August is actually the Earth's orbit passing through the debris from the swift-Tuttle comet. The meteor shower is named for the Perseidi, who were the sons of the ancient Greek hero Perseus. Perseus was a legendary figure with a fine family pedigree. He was the mythical son of Zeus and Argive princess Dana. Perseus earned himself a constellation after a number of epic adventures across the Mediterranean and Near East that included the frequently illustrated murder of the Gorgon's sister Medusa. Another of Perseus's celebrated acts was to rescue the princess Andromeda. Abandoned by her parents to placate a sea monster, the princess was found by Perseus on a rock by the ocean. He married her, and they went on to have 7 sons and 2 daughters. Skywatchers believe that the constellation Perseus, located just beside Andromeda in the night sky, was the origin of shooting stars they could see every summer, and so the name Perseidi stuck. In Christian tradition, the Perseid meteor shower has long been connected to the martyrdom of St. Lawrence. Laurentius was a deacon in the early church at Rome, martyred in the year 258 AD during the persecutions of the Emperor Valerian. The martyrdom supposedly took place on August 10th, when the meteor shower was at its height, and so the shooting stars are equated to the saint's tears. Though the myths and legends may make one think that ancient civilizations had little scientific understanding of what meteors, comets and asteroids could be, this couldn't be farther from the truth. The early astronomers of the Near East, those who created the Babylonian and Egyptian calendars and astronomical data, were by far the most advanced in antiquity. And a recent study of ancient cuneiform texts has proven that the Babylonian ability to track comets, planetary movements and sky events as far back as the first millennium BC involved a much more complex geometry than had been previously believed.
So what you have seen is how we connect all these events into worldly cycles. There are many parts of the very large mechanisms of the underworld, the technologies that are responsible for the creation and movement of luminaries, the stars, and pretty much most of nature's processes. The Creator's glory is a technological glory. Until you decode what creates nature, you are left guessing, but we can see what the nature of our world truly is now, and it is a technological construct which reveals a very intelligent Creator. A construct of vast magnitude and magnificence that has been described and depicted everywhere, in scriptures, Enoch, sacred geometry, geoglyphs, petroglyphs, hieroglyphs, prophecies. It shows how technologies have been personified to hide how this world truly works. The globe was invented to hide the 12 gates and anything that is beyond. We have seen how politicians use the construct's destructive cycles to fool the unwary. The forgotten knowledge we are now rediscovering again, a knowledge that was always there to warn us of these cycle changes and to plan for them. Open your eyes, people, and see what the creator of this amazing construct was teaching us. How it works, how to harness its energies, and how to survive its destructive cycles. So, if you truly want world peace, then it has to start with the truth. The truth about who we are, where we are, and where we live.